so much for being here and sharing your time with us. Excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm genuinely excited to be here too.
Yes, I love that we share a mutual love for polyphenols and have bonded over that. And
we're recruiting others to the mission.
Trying to grow the tribe. I first learned about you because on your podcast, Foodtrainers, you often talk about olive oil. And so, of course, people would hear it and send it to me and be like, this woman is so aligned with you. And so I've been a loyal listener for probably over a year now. I feel like you and Kayleen are my friends. So it's excited to finally meet you.
It's funny, I'll flip it back on you because when I first got the olive oils and I thought, and they were new to me, and I was so excited to share this new thing, so many of our followers and listeners were like, oh, it's the best. So it might be the same people. You know?
Yes, I think our audiences are probably very aligned. So excited for our community to meet you. So I thought I would just, I want to get tons of practical tips and tricks from you because that's, often what you're sharing on the Foodtrainers podcast. But would love to start with, what are the benefits of working regularly with a nutritionist? Who should see a nutritionist? And, how do people know that it's the right time for them to do that?
Well, it's interesting. I'm biased, but I think almost everybody who's interested in taking a deeper dive in their nutritionist should see a nutritionist. When I first started practicing, it was much more, if you were sick or if your doctor referred you or if you were obese. And now the reason I called it Foodtrainers is I happened to be initially, before I opened it, working at the Equinox clubs. And I saw that people were, sort of so proud of their personal trainer and then would scoot into my office, on the sly. And I was like, wait, why is nutrition different? So I wanted to sort of create a model like seeing a personal trainer for healthy people and also people who have, diagnoses and things like that. But really just, like you would somewhere between a personal trainer and a therapist, right?
Yeah, I think the good thing is it really is sort of becoming common knowledge that it should be part of your preventative medicine.
Exactly.
And so
it was very different when, I've been doing even just this business for 2 decades. And it was like, people felt like it was like a failed mission from the start. So I will toot my horn on that, but also just that the tides turned and that it is more commonplace.
Yeah. And I think post-pandemic too, people are just much more concerned about their health and wellness and what they're putting in their body. So tell us once with the clients in your practice, what does it look like? I think that you do, blood work and deep dives into people's personal markers when evaluating what they're eating, but tell us what it's like. Someone, comes to you and wants to begin seeing you. What does that look like? And what are sort of your first steps and medium-term steps?
Yeah, I think the biggest, when I think about that and also think about who doesn't do well and does do well, I think there's a couple of things with the nutrition. One is that people feel like they should be able to do it by themselves. So they feel like, okay, let me do the least number, and it's an expense, least number of sessions, and then I'll be good. I'll get it. It's just, but it's not, it's not information based. So it's not something that in a week or two, I feel like I can, change somebody's habits for good. So I think in any, it doesn't have to be with us, with anybody who's seeing a nutritionist or somebody in that capacity, see it as long-term. There's, what is it? It's like slower, shorter, later, longer. You kind of have to have that patience when you pursue it. But on the second thing that you said, I think the coolest part and the fun thing, I think it's fun, that's happening with wearables and Oura rings and blood sugar monitors is, no two sessions, no two nutrition plans on the same person. I have a client this morning that doesn't do well with protein powders, really good quality protein powders. And, somebody else, it's that individual piece of how much vitamin D does this client need to raise it to the optimal range is really, sort of exciting right now.
Yeah, super interesting because it really is so personal. But I think there are, and what I'd love to get from you on this podcast are what are those nutrition pieces of advice that are pretty universal?
Right.
But going back to, the way that you work with clients, tell us about the testing that you typically do alongside and maybe share some of your success stories? Like, how do you get people to change their habits? Because it is so much about that. Like, I have a chocolate habit. Every night I have to eat chocolate. And being so focused on health and wellness, I feel like I should be able to control it better, but I still just can't. And so I'm always constantly trying to figure out like, what's the least bad thing I could be eating that satisfies that craving. Probably is a way to just, get rid of that craving altogether. But yeah, maybe you can tell us about some of your success stories and change.
Well, I also think like on the list of habits to change, chocolate, and I'm assuming like dark chocolate habit is not like, wouldn't be probably the first place I'd go, but I understand what you're saying. We don't want to have a dependence on anything, right? So just a simple tip, something that we do with clients that lean a little bit sweet is we do challenge days 1 day a week. And one of them is a savory day. So for 1 day, skip everything sweet, from a sauce to a glass of wine to a dark chocolate, even if it's a healthy sweet. You can really, it does two things. One, people are like, oh, I went a day without it. Like, this is a possibility that exists in the world, right? And then sometimes you'll see that they're doing that a couple of days a week. Or sometimes they're like, okay, that was so difficult. I was thinking about sugar all day long. I felt like my energy was lagging. And then you're like, okay, like that was a bigger change to somebody than I expected. So I think sometimes doing like a 1 day test plants the seed for how to change the habit. And I just think like nutrition can be sort of dreadful, and it can't be a chore or nobody's going to stick with it. So we do this, and people can do this on their own too, find ways to sort of gamify it. So it's, fun. I think it's fun. That's my mission. Yeah.
I think so too. Love it. And do you also see patients or clients that are struggling with deep health issues? And what are the common ones? Like, what do you see most often in your practice that people are coming to see you for in terms of correction of something?
Yeah, I mean, lots of digestive issues. And I would say, a lot of clients, they come for multiple things, right? So they may be prompted to come in after having Lyme disease or a diagnosis. And then they're like, but, let's look at my hormones and my weight, that kind of thing too. So, but other times I would say probably, concerns over, not so much like concerns over heart disease, concerns over brain health, and also post diagnoses or recovery in terms of cancer. Those are, and I'm not making light of anything, but I have somebody who just finished serious treatment and surgery with a not so great diagnosis. She's doing great. And she was like, and now I want to focus on what I look like. Of course, we're focusing on, sort of the anti-cancer ingredients in her diet and how to keep her the healthiest, but I'm not anti-vanity,
No, that's important too, for confidence and how you're feeling every single day. So you're helping people across, so many different disciplines and so many different issues that they're all.
And that's what's nice with like sort of basic good nutrition, is that you don't have to pick. Like, we have a checklist, it might be weight loss, weight gain, digestive issues, PMS, perimenopause, all of these things. And oftentimes before you, address, let's say, perimenopause, or address migraines or whatever, somebody's issues may be, just by improving their basics, lowering their sugar, increasing their sleep, some of those things, take a turn for the better.
Yeah, so I'd love to shift towards getting some practical advice from you, and you've already started to do that, so thank you. My team and I noticed that this morning, it's November 7th today, you released a podcast about the dangers of seed oils, and we were so excited to see it because that's, of course, a topic that's very near and dear to our heart. As you can imagine, we're very focused on healthy oils. Canola and vegetable oil are our enemy. And, we get really excited when, ancient wisdom catches up, or modern science catches up to ancient wisdom, like stuff that the ancient Greeks have known all along, like it's healthy to cook with olive oil. And that's what you should be, consuming every single day from an oil perspective. And so I'd encourage everyone to go listen to that episode and find it on the Foodtrainers podcast, but maybe you can give us some of that, deep dive on seed oils here, what people should be looking for, what they do to the body, and what we should be replacing them with.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting the way you, sort of presented that, because it kind of is true across the board that like whole foods that have been used for thousands of years are still good for us. I mean, I can't think of an example of something, you know, if you think about green tea and nuts and olive oil and those things. So, but I also
And
think
just
that,
on that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I love to bring this up. So, you know, intermittent fasting, and fasting is, of course, another big topic in the wellness world where there's been a lot of research and science. And when I think about like my Greek family and Greek ancestors, they fasted for 40 days before Easter, for 40 days before
huh,
Christmas. They fasted
wow.
days in August, and not full fast, but they like remove, you know, meat, dairy,
Mm.
oils, and they also fast every Sunday morning before going to church to receive Holy Communion. So it's like they did intermittent fasting once a week. They did like their, you know, longer periods of elimination, and it's just so funny because of course that's just ancient wisdom.
What's old is new. Yeah, it's really funny that you say that, because sometimes as I'm a big, you know, believer in terms of timing and eating, and when you eat is important. But sometimes when clients are going to church or temple and out the door to go, it's like my one morning where they, you know, sort of have you know, then it's easy for them. They turn around, it's, you know, midday or late morning, right? So it's funny that you say that. Yeah, and then I think that if you said to people, what are, you know, we opened our newsletter with this, you know, thought today, like, what are processed foods? Do you eat a lot of them? And I would bet a lot of your listeners and a lot of, you know, our followers would say, and listeners would say, no, I don't eat fast food. I don't eat, you know, sort of, you know, crappy snacks. I eat good snacks, that kind of thing. You look at the seed oils, which are, just so people know, canola, soybean, safflower, sunflower, peanut, grapeseed, I'm missing one, corn oil, you know, and they're, you know, I don't know as much about, you know, olive oil making, but I can bet that it's not like a 17-step process involving bleaching, deodorizing, et cetera. So I think
Heat,
that when you
right?
talk,
Heat
what?
and heat, right? The temperature being so high and the processing of those oils makes it completely rancid.
Yeah. In fact, there's a author of the book, The Big Fat Surprise, which isn't a new book, but it's really a great book. And she talks about how certain fats came to be popular. And it's usually not because of health. It's usually because of economics or availability. I think some of the seed oils came from like soap making or something at one point. But she talks about the smell when she went to a processing plant, this foul gray smelling liquid that they then treat with all these steps. Like, I just want everyone to think about consuming that. If you watch the videos, you'll never consume them.
Oh my gosh, we should link those in the show notes for
Yeah,
sure.
go Google YouTube the making of canola oil, and you know, you'll that's all. You don't need to listen to anything I say.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So, and those seed oils pop up in so many things that we're consuming day to day, salad dressings. And, you know, the one for me is oat milk. So
Yes,
I love my daily coffee with oat milk. It just tastes delicious. And I know they're using Oatly at the
right.
coffee shop. And so I try to limit how much I'm having, but I know that there's grapeseed oil in there.
Yeah,
Um,
or canola. Yeah, or rapeseed. Yeah, canola oil.
And so, you know, I know that I need to take that out, but I haven't. It's part of like, you know, a daily indulgence for me. Where else is it hiding? I know that when we eat out, we're probably consuming canola and vegetable oil. What are like easy tricks to try to at least reduce it in our daily intake?
Well, I love that, you know, you outed yourself with the oat milk. I'll talk to you about that afterwards, because I think that everybody has their exceptions, right? Like, probably, you know, and I think that the problem with these seed oils, once you start to look at, I'm not talking about, like, look at Kayleen and I. Kayleen was saying, oh, they're everywhere at Trader Joe's, which is her place. And I was like, they're you know, open any wrapper at Whole Foods too. And I think that can turn people off because they feel like it's hopeless. You know, they're everywhere. If I eat anything, if I go out to eat, they're going to be in there. So I think that it's a process of look, you know, I've gotten a bunch of messages already today. Oh, I found it in this snack. I found it. So oat milk, salad dressings are a biggie, you know, even for, I'm talking about like healthy ingredients, not, you know, sort of donuts and things like that, which have other issues. Roasted nuts, like your almonds are not getting roasted unless they're like Marcona almonds in olive oil, you know, they're probably in peanut oil. So nut butters. So people are like, Lauren, I've been getting unsweetened, which you told me about, and I just looked and it has safflower oil. So my suggestion is, as you replace things or run out of things, to sort of one by one try to find an improved version, because they do exist. And the second thing is, I'll just give my personal example. I did, be careful what you wish for, this like crazy deep dive into my own blood work and, beyond cholesterol and, things and blood sugar. And my doctor went over everything, and he was like, your omega-3s, which are your good fats in fish and walnuts and chia seeds, anti-inflammatory, are great. I was, sort of feeling good at myself. And he's like, but your omega-6s, they're not high, they're within range, but, I think you could lower them. And I was like up in arms. I was like, me? Where are they coming from? And he was like, well, chances are they're not cooking your fish when you go out to eat in avocado oil or olive oil. And even though I don't eat out a lot and I cook a lot, there you go. Right. So I think, again, like, nobody's immune. And even for me, that was a little bit of like, oh, now I want to get them a little bit lower. So that's all we're talking about, in terms of it's hard to avoid them completely.
Yeah, I wish, restaurants could shift towards cooking with extra virgin olive oil. Of course, it's more expensive and restaurant margins are already so tight. And so I understand why, but I think as consumers, if we can start asking these questions in restaurants, we can slowly change that behavior, because, I think that restaurants that could market themselves as, we don't use any seed oils, or we limit the use of seed oils and we're cooking, with extra virgin olive oil, like, that's a restaurant I would definitely frequent much more.
Yeah.
If I was getting wild salmon and grass-fed beef and, no seed oils, that's a place that I would go on a more frequent basis.
Right. And I think
It's moving that way.
I all the time, like, there was a nameless sauce, we'll say. And it was a company, I know the founder, small company, mom as well. And, we think, moms want to feed their kids well. And so we trust them. And first I, sort of just mentioned it. And then I circled it and said, this is the greatest company. I would use this every day if it didn't have this. And, an excuse was made, and nobody likes being called out, except I do think this company has good intentions. The sauce no longer has the safflower oil. So if everybody does that, again, it's in their best interest for the nut butter companies to not have it. Carrageenan was in everything. High fructose corn syrup were in a lot of things. So yeah. And if you do go to a restaurant and they have wild salmon or don't use seed oils, I think, do an Insta story or tell your friends about that too, so that we can spread the word.
Love that. Consumers do have power with our wallets. So, so speaking of extra virgin olive oil, I want to get your take on polyphenols. So we talk a lot about polyphenols to the Kosterina community, but would love to get, your overview. What is a polyphenol? Why is it good for us? And just, for me, I really started Kosterina when I learned about the polyphenols in olive oil. I ended up taking an olive oil sommelier course.
Wait, there is such a thing?
Yes, it's a real thing.
Okay, I'll need to get the info.
Yeah, it's super interesting as a foodie. It was just fascinating. But I learned there, I think I always knew olive oil was healthy, being from Greece and, having it at the center of the meal. But I learned about early harvest olive oil and what the polyphenols in olive oil could do in terms of, reducing the risk of all chronic disease. And I just thought that was really powerful. I felt like the US consumer didn't know that and wanted to start this brand to begin to, share that wisdom. And so, of course, there are polyphenols in a lot of foods. So would love to just get the overview from you. How do you think about them for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think of them as, well, here's the great thing about polyphenols, and I'm a little biased because they're plant components in various, foods and beverages. But the easy sell for me with polyphenols is that, they're in olive oil, which I've never met anybody, that didn't love at least, one olive oil. They're in coffee. That's a big one for me. In a lot of teas, in green tea, in cacao, so dark chocolate. So like we're, blueberries, right? So it's not as if, even though I think you should eat them too, we're talking about sardines or, cod liver oil. So from a dietary perspective, I think people can get excited, we're not. So I think that's what's great. And I think that, I always try to find like the hook that's going to make something resonate with people. So, you could talk about olive oil and memory. You can talk about, like you said, heart disease, diabetes, sort of joint health, really any cancer, any condition. But I think kind of like the fun part is also like we have a supplement that has some polyphenols in it. I think people need to eat their polyphenols, but just because we believe in them, and we call it decade eraser. We're not claiming to take a decade off anyone, but just because these are not only helping you long term, they help your skin, they help your hair, so there is sort of like, if you look at the research on cacao and dark chocolate, and there's probably no better skincare ingredient to ingest into olive oil too, internally. So I think that when you have this group of healthy foods that are delicious foods, the only goal or suggestion that I'd give to people is try to pick a couple of them, of course, olive oil, because that's easy because it goes with everything, and eat them daily or almost daily, right? So you don't want to drink like green tea when you go for sushi. You want to, if you like green tea or matcha, buy a delicious one, and maybe you have it, once a day at a certain time. So you create those rituals that's where you really get the benefit of a food, is when they're, sort of staples in your diet.
Love that. And there is one quote that my team and I pulled out of your book, which is a quote by Robert Puller. That's quote, "Good habits once established are just as hard to break as bad habits." So I feel like you kind of just.
I love that quote. I looked a little when I wrote the book a million years ago. I don't know who Robert Fuller is, so maybe one of your listeners can tell us, but it's a widely used quote. And I think that, that's what we're after. I will see clients sometimes for a period of time, and then, they'll test things out on their own. And I love when they, sort of come back and they're like, okay, I'm still taking my vitamin D. I'm still drinking, some of our silly rules, like a liter of water by lunch, those things that over time you are on autopilot with. It's not like, should I not? And that's really exciting.
And I'm glad you mentioned like the beauty benefits, like are polyphenols the ultimate beauty product, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I would say polyphenols and omega-3s, like the 1-2 punch. You sort of have your salmon with your olive oil and your, dark chocolate after. And I think that those two and water and sleep are probably all we all need, and then a couple of nice creams and serums and doctors. So.
Awesome. I want to also get your take on vinegar. So we've been following the glucose goddess, and we've also seen the rise of levels and other continuous glucose monitors, and people have been learning so much about their own blood sugar and regulating it. And of course, there's been a lot of hype around apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
We also just launched a drinkable vinegar line called our vinegar line in 3 different flavors. They are sweetened with actual crushed fruit. And the vinegar actually acts as the preservative for that fresh fruit. And so they really have this like impeccable flavor. And if for those who know anything about culinary science, acid actually amplifies the flavor of whatever you're drinking or eating. And it's super interesting. In the development of these vinegars, we realized, oh my God, this tastes actually better than a strawberry. This tastes better than a tangerine, but better because of that, combination with the acid. And so, we're working on some research to understand the blood sugar stabilization effect of our vinegars. But if you could talk a little bit about like your use of ACV or your recommended use of ACV or vinegar in general, would love to understand those health benefits.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you just said about acid, because I finished some, even, just for flavor. Even I was making a chili, I, hit it with a little vinegar, always some lemon, always some lime. I always knew it added to the flavor. I didn't know it like amplified the flavor. So you taught me something. So vinegars. So again, like you said, like these ancient foods, vinegars are not new, and they're, sort of not like a gimmick either. So all vinegar, which is acetic acid, in its chemical form, has a blood sugar moderating effect. So, I'm a fan of apple cider vinegar because the way it's fermented, it's also a probiotic food. You want to get it raw with that, sort of cloudy thing in it that is called the mother. But if somebody's like, I don't have apple cider vinegar, will red wine vinegar work? Will white vinegar work? Yeah, it doesn't all taste as good, but it all works. So vinegar, either consumed before, or during a meal, probably even right after, before your blood sugar has a chance to rise, will, if, as you said, if anybody's following the glucose goddess, moderate that, rise in your blood sugar, even if you're consuming something, let's say a grain or a potato or something that would raise your blood sugar a fair amount usually. The other, and I think the interesting thing that you brought up with levels and monitoring your blood sugar is that some of these things, and we call them secret weapons, are more helpful for some people. Glucose goddess is posting her data, which is, compelling, but her data on certain things, or her response, and I've seen this with many clients, could be different than mine. So that's where, it is fun to do these experiments.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of lead me right into my next question, which is about carbs. So
Okay.
I think,
Can I run and get my power cord?
Yeah, please go for it.
Oh my God.
So it doesn't die, go for it. I think this is so good. I'm loving all the tips.
Oh, good.
Yes, I was just about to ask you about carbs, so I'll jump back into it and we can
hear. You can ask again, sorry.
Oh, all good. So I think one of the most confusing things about nutrition advice is around carbs. So I kind of know the high level. I know I'm supposed to eat a lot of vegetables. I'm supposed to eat the rainbow. I'm supposed to eat grass-fed meat, wild salmon, no seed oils. But I don't know if I'm supposed to cut out carbs. Am I supposed to lower carbs? And then alongside that question is gluten. Should everyone, even if they don't present with GI symptoms, be trying to reduce their consumption of gluten?
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think without knowing you, the quantity of carbs that you should have would vary, right? Depending on somebody's goals and age and activity level and all of those things. So various clients have different budgets as we give them. However, we provide clients with a cheat sheet, which is like, what are the best vegetables? Well, pretty much all of them are good, but what are the best fruits to eat? What are the best condiments, etc. We don't have gluten on our plan, right? So we can make the argument that gluten is really delicious in certain things, but even, if clients aren't tested to be intolerant, it doesn't improve anybody's health. So I think people can make the argument, not everyone has to be gluten-free, fine, but tell me why we should eat it. I'm allergic to wheat, so I'm out of the conversation.
Well, I like what you just said, right? Like, it doesn't improve anyone's health. So even if
we have no biological, requirement for wheat or gluten or any grains for that matter, even though but I think that, again, I want the things that I'm consuming regularly, when I'm not traveling to Italy or something like that, to be improving my health. So hate me if you want to, but it's true. That being said, there's a hierarchy, right? In every food group, there are better proteins and, sort of more processed proteins. And I would say even better, higher fiber fruits and, more sugary fruits. If you're in the fruit aisle, you're in good shape. But in terms of carbs, I would put, sort of your beans, your lentils, your legumes, and your, sort of whole food carbs, your butternut squash, yes, it's a carb, your sweet potatoes, things of that nature at the top. A lot of our clients eat those, regularly. Again, not 3 times a day, but they're part of their diets, that kind of thing. And then I think there are things that, maybe like a rice and things like that, or quinoa, that are, they don't have gluten, and they might have some fiber depending on the type, and a lot of people don't react to them. So yeah, I think like a sushi roll is fine, that kind of thing. But that's where I would go. I think that if somebody's listening to this and is like, how often should I have carbs? I again would base it on, if somebody came in and they're having, toast at breakfast and rice at lunch and potatoes at dinner, I would probably start by having them have one meal, preferably breakfast, without the carbs, and start from there. Most of our clients end up more so at the one a day or only one meal that has carbs. But again, you could be listening to this being like, I don't eat carbs. And you could be listening to this being like, wait, not carbs at every meal. That's pretty sucky.
Right. It's such a wide range of where people are starting from. So you would actually recommend removing carbs from the first meal of the day.
Yes,
Okay.
100%. So when you have, and this is the timing thing too. Again, I know breakfast with people intermittent fasting could be more like a lunch, but we're very sensitive to what we have at that first meal of the day. We also, sort of are very susceptible in a good way to protein when you're, after the overnight fast. But when you compare head to head, let's say your traditional breakfast, your cereal, muffins, waffles, pancakes, and there's been studies that have done this, even oatmeal. So don't think you're oatmeal gets the pass, right, to an egg breakfast or something like that. Your appetite will be higher with the carb breakfast. Your cravings will be different, actually more towards, less healthy foods than whole foods. So that's sometimes, I don't even touch any part of a client's day, a new client, and I'm like, let's just start the day with protein. But people like it because I advocate carbs at dinner. So it's a good trade-off.
I do like this answer. I'm taking notes. Awesome. Now, I know you're a mom. I'm sure there are many people in our community who are also parents. Tell us about how we can get our kids to eat healthy, because it's very, very hard for me. I am super focused on it. I still find it difficult. Any tricks, like any magic tricks for getting your kids to eat broccoli? What can we be doing, or any meal ideas that you can throw our way?
Yeah, I mean, first, I'm not, I don't see children as, I'm not a child nutrition expert. I'm just a mom who has a couple of boys that are big now. But it's funny when you said you were very focused on it, because my philosophy, and it's kind of how I was brought up, is like, I was always a big advocate of, this is what I have in my house, and I know what they're going to eat at birthday parties and school. And I worked on school nutrition a little bit because that was a place that they were every day. But I wasn't as focused on my kids' nutrition as some of my friends were with theirs. And I think sometimes there's something to be said for not making it such a thing and a battle. So I was big on, exposure. Every night had, a salad or a vegetable or both. Most of their school nights had a home cooked dinner, and they got used to it. Did my kids eat every component of every dinner? Of course not. And then I, within reason, try to tailor it. One wasn't a tomato lover and one didn't like certain spices. But so I think maybe for some parents, laying off is actually, it's hard, I know, is the better tactic. The other thing that I will say, funny enough, for parents is one of my two boys was, just a lot less adventurous. He ate well and ate different cuisines, but wasn't as apt to try things. He went away to college and has, a group of friends from all different places in different countries, and, more adventurous than he is. I just visited him, and my mom and I were remarking, like, okay, he spent 18 years in my house and didn't eat, a lot of raw fish. And now, all of these different things. So I think sometimes peers can positively influence kids too, when they see, sort of their friends or their house eating a certain cuisine or food.
Yep, love that. College is perfect for that exposure. So
I will say there's a Chick-fil-A on his campus, so that was that was my sort of battle for a little bit. But this generation, I have to say what you will about like kids and teens, and they have social media and whatever. They are so savvy. I mean, I wasn't eating, these, sort of whole foods. My other son sent a lunch picture. He had like salmon at college. So I think there's a benefit for them being exposed to TikTok food videos and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And there's more, I think schools are trying to integrate like gardens into school education.
Yes.
Right. Because I think my generation got none of that.
No, and I do think, it's difficult. And I've, sort of been through this with camps and schools and things. Sometimes there's just like, whether it's budget or whether it's where they're getting the food from, it's not going to be this like, all organic, beautiful food situation. Some schools are, but even sometimes just like making, like I said, changing the snacks that are offered or changing how frequently snacks are offered to kids can be easy shifts for schools too.
Love it. Well, I also just want to learn a little bit more about you. Tell us, what motivates you throughout the day, what you're thinking about for food trainers, next, and also
Yeah.
next for you personally.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I, first of all, pretty much, and I'm very transparent, I like my mezcal, and I, sort of will never give up cheese and things, but I do practice what I preach. So I think I'm always, what's the term, like me search, like you kind of look at what interests you. Now I'm in my 40s, and now I'm thinking a lot more about aging and brain health and, hormone health. And so my content will reflect some of that always, but I never try to make it about like, this is what I do and everybody should do that, because I think that's where a lot of experts and influencers go wrong. And that can be a tricky thing. In terms of food trainers, I think that I used to fall prey a lot more to the what's next question, which is like, I should, and I did the book, and I have a podcast, and we have an online shop. But I really do, like, my happy place at the end of the day is I love counseling. I like a day of sessions and, sort of problem solving for people. Like, I usually am energized and not tired, even if I'm like in a bad mood before I start. So I know a lot of nutritionists, like their goal is to move away from counseling. Like, I don't think I'll ever do that. But continuing with the podcast, and I do have like an app idea. I think that'll be 2023, writing, always writing, so I keep it interesting, but I also just like what I do.
Awesome. I think that's probably reflects in the success that you've had so far with your current clients and the podcast, because you're focused and you know exactly that your goal is to really help people through this with the knowledge that you have. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I think sometimes, I always say like, I'm not good at anything else, but I, have a little confidence after all these years in my advice and my ability to help people. I think we're all sometimes trying to, have our, hands in so many different things and feel we should be diversifying. And, we're all so addicted to newness. And sometimes it's like, okay, if you have in life like 2 or 3 things that you really like that you could do professionally or not professionally and enjoy, I don't know, maybe I don't need to speak a new language, right?
Amazing. Well, but before we close out, I want to ask you our lightning round, just some fast fire questions for
Okay, love a lightning round, but I'm not a good lightning rounder, I'll tell you that. I
That's
don't
okay.
give quick answers. I think the listeners can tell.
We'll excuse you. It's all good. Okay, number one, is there anything surprising that most people don't know about you?
No, I just think it's always good to chime in. Every time I run into someone, they're like, oh, life looks pretty good. Work looks great. Like, we are not our Instagram feed. So I think there's probably a lot of things people don't know about me. I would love to, but like a lot of the time I post a picture where I don't look like I do first thing in the morning, and my meals that are pretty and perfectly composed. But sometimes I actually post like the ugly thrown together meals that I can't tell you how many people are like, oh my God, that makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
That I don't have a rainbow salad every day for lunch. So I think that's just something we all should know, that like we are not, our social media curated situation.
Love that one. What is your favorite food, healthy or not?
Well, I already said cheese and mezcal. I don't know, just I would say like salmon, dark chocolate, something like that. It's hard to pick one, like a children.
Predictable, but good, solid. Do you have a favorite ingredient to cook with?
I'm not kissing ass, but I think we did, sort of align, because I do, olive oil is just, I always say like, I don't have a recipe. It's just salt, and olive oil and maybe lemon. That's in everything that I make. I would say, now that I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, salt, pepper, olive oil, lemon, herbs go a long way, and then just like the best quality fish, chicken, vegetables that you can get. I find that if you go to this farmer's market and come home, like, you don't need to doctor it so much.
Love it. I think we are leading the witness a little with that question, but we'll take it.
Well, I would say my spin on that would be like, have a few ingredients that are your go-tos. It doesn't have to be olive oil. It could be, avocado oil. It could be, but I think that like, then it simplifies your process a lot rather than, reinventing the wheel all the time.
Yep. What is your favorite place to travel?
Well, travel is like my, like, you know, if there's a passion that I have, I can never answer, it's travel. And my husband and I disagree on this. Like, I am always after a place I haven't been to. I'm a little bit, you know, I like to have the newness in that. So, you know, this year we went to Norway. I'm going, you know, we've used our Amex points well. I'm going to Dubai with my boys over Christmas. So I can't say I have one favorite place.
That's great. So your favorite place to travel is places you've never been.
That's good. Okay, see, there's a
Love
quote
it.
either Susan Sontag quote, something like that. I don't know where, I don't know if I don't know. I'm not gonna try.
We'll look for it. We'll look for it after this. What is your favorite part of the day?
Morning.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not even not a night person. Like, the sun goes down and I'm like not useful to anybody.
What is your favorite workout and what do you have time for?
I would say like the staple in my life, like, even though I've, you know, dabbled in a lot of things, is running. Like, I love it, you know, grateful that the body can still do it. It doesn't take a long time. You know, I'm not running, you know, 6 and 10 miles anymore. So, you know, any bit that I do have time for, you know, 3 or 4 days a week, I usually do that. Pilates too. And, you know, some strength training. I'm a big walker, but I would say running is my number one.
Awesome. And then last
And
one, what is, give us one sort of meal that we can prep really easily. Like, what's your weekly go-to? Like, you're in a rush, you need to feed yourself or the family. What's the easy thing that you'll whip up?
well, I just came to mind what I'm making tonight, and it's a client favorite. So it's a pistachio salmon recipe, which literally is, I think it's Dijon mustard, olive oil. You take buy the pistachios out of the shell. I do it unless you want to sit there. And you know, sort of mix olive oil, lemon, and Dijon mustard, press some pistachios on top, put your salmon in, depending on the thickness. I do 415-ish minutes. It's pretty. It looks like you made a lot of effort, and it's a crowd pleaser too.
Love it. Perfect. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. I'd love for you to just share where people can find you, how they can follow you. And we really appreciate your time today. And you dropped a ton of knowledge on us. So thank you so much. But let us know where.
No, thank you. Very good question. So foodtrainers.com is our website. There's also, you know, I'm never a product pusher, but we do have a small online shop if I mentioned anything. And that's found on the site. Food Trainers on Instagram. And then Food Trainers podcast. We make it very easy for people. And we also have a newsletter that we only send out once a week on Mondays. And you can sign up for that on our website.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. We so appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.